Hey everyone, just finished up with day one of Network Field Day 33. Going to go through a recap of each vendor that we spoke with today. And we started with Graphiant, and they were actually at Field Day 29, which I was at as well. And they did their first, essentially their first open public presentation at that point in time. So it's really good to catch up with them and learn a little bit more about their platform. So when we started talking about their platform, something that I feel did a better job, at least this time around, talking about was explaining the difference between their service and SD-WAN. Now, I personally feel like SD-WAN is still newer tech. It's not as if it's out there everywhere. Now, I know it is being picked up by more. It's getting easier to consume, but Graphian is looking a little bit further down the line. And when pressed on it, one of the big differentiators they made between their platform and we'll just call it traditional SD-WAN is the number of tunnels or the lack of tunnels that you need for their service. So with Graphiant being in that space, competitive within that space, their secret sauce, more or less, is this stateless core that they have built throughout. It's not completely global yet, and they're still working on building it out. They said that they're within Equinix and Digital Realty colo spaces, is that you establish a tunnel to that core, whichever colo space it is, but then you're within their network that they've put together. So it's not traditional routing. It's more tagging based, which kind of feels a little bit like MPLS, but that you have more control over it and fewer tunnels and fewer overhead, fewer um, computation, computational overhead because you're not decrypting as you're moving across tunnels and moving out other tunnels. And it's also a bit more secure because it's not being decrypted coming out of one tunnel into another tunnel at any point. That once you're in, and it doesn't get decrypted. So once you're inside, that's really nice. Something that I asked, which seemed like an interesting take, was that if trying to figure out if you could decide how to route through their network, through data centers, based on current, like how green is that data center operating right now? Is that data center really hot right now? Or is there a lot of compute going on there? Well, maybe we want to route in a different direction, which they hadn't heard of before, but did sort of align that to, well, what if you want to route around a country or route around a geographical region? That you can build that into the platform through use of the tagging to help you control where it goes. So it's not true it's not true routing in kind of like the typical BGP, EGI, or EIGRP sense, but you still have some control, some sway over where your data runs through the network. The thing that I found the most interesting, though, is so they brought up this design and they were talking about basically any to any, so that once you're an endpoint within the environments, that you can get to any other endpoint. Uh, and I asked the question, well, what if I don't want that? Because if you think about retail, there's no reason for retail store one to talk to retail store two. There's not really that. I don't know why you would need that. Or if you're in healthcare, you wouldn't need a doctor's office. And when I say talk to another doctor's office, I mean necessarily route to another doctor's office and access, physical things within there. Now, you may need that from from a centralized IT standpoint to be able to get out. But do those offices really need to go between themselves? I don't think they do. But they do have a way of crafting those policies to make sure that if you want any to any, you need any to any, you can absolutely have that. But that's not just the de facto way; it's the only way that it works. It's you're going to be able to control. All right, where am I going? Or more importantly, in those situations, where am I not? The very last thing I'm going to mention that they put out there, which I think was the thing that resonated the most with me, was their way of bringing. It was their gateway that they can bring this gateway edge point or edge device into AWS, or they can bring it into, I think Azure was in there as well. So when you start talking about moving data in and out of the cloud, or you start becoming a multi-cloud organization, and you have different ways of configuring that communication in and out, well, you can actually bring your AWS presence. And it's not like it's a private link thing. This is taking their appliance, their gateway, and putting it in your AWS environment. And now it's just another endpoint like it would be for another branch office or something along those lines. So it's interesting to think about taking the cloud and from a routing, like an actual data routing standpoint, that it's no different than another branch site or a secondary data center or anywhere else on your network. That now, again, just from a routing standpoint, you can get in and out of there with ease. There's also some interesting conversation in there about using it as a backbone replacement. So if you're, let's say you're East Coast and West Coast, you don't have to build through somebody else's backbone, or you don't have to sort of construct that on your own using different providers and different data centers. They've already built that ring out for where you can get from one of their data centers to another data center, and you don't touch anything else. They gave us a slide that showed where they're deployed right now, and they said it's about 10 weeks to bring a new data center online. So if somebody absolutely had a need and said, no, we need one here, if you pay the fee to get that done, they'd be able to do that. And it's about 10 weeks. But just kind of overall, it was a really refreshing conversation with Graphiant, because I'll be honest, when we had that first one, I was left a little bit confused. And I even went back and watched the video that I created last time and thought, this doesn't feel like I saw the same thing. And I'm guessing that just has to do with a lot of the maturity and the build out of the platform that they've done over the past year. And it was an absolute phenomenal presentation. So if you're in the SD-WAN space, if you do struggle with a lot of that tunnel creep, you got 10,000 sites and you've got tunnels going everywhere, you may want to check it out. It's a definitely interesting tech. Hopefully, let's see here, it was 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. So maybe in 4 more field days, hopefully I'm back at that and Graphiant's back at that. We can do a checkup there as well. But I'll definitely be keeping an eye on them as best I can to see where they go next, because I walked away with a much better understanding, and I feel like you can have definitely a more intelligent conversation around what it is, what they do, and who they do it for. Thank you for watching. That was my review on the Graphiant conversation we had today at Network Field Day 33. See you soon. Bye.